I'm going to take you through how to use apostrophes, that dreaded piece of punctuation that has pedants out with their marker pens vandalising greengrocers' signs. Let's find out how we do it. There are two main rules for how you use apostrophes. They are omission, or you might have heard it described as contraction, and possession, when somebody owns something. So let's start with omission. When words have been shortened by removing letters, an apostrophe shows where the letters used to be. So with these three examples, if we take the O out of is not, have not and should not, and put an apostrophe in instead, they become isn't, haven't and shouldn't. Is it always vowels you take out? That's a good question. Well, using an apostrophe is usually about spelling words the way we say them. And if you think of some of our more complicated spellings in English, that makes a nice change. So it's often vowels that get taken out, but not always. So if you look at these examples, shall not, we've taken out the L's as well as the O to make shan't. Will not becomes won't, and that's even more interesting because we've actually changed the main vowel sound. And should have becomes should have. This is a really interesting one because people hear should have, could have, would have, and they don't know how to spell the of bit. And they quite often go for of. And it's wrong. It drives English teachers to despair because have is an auxiliary verb, and that means it's a verb that's used to help form a tense. So you say, I have done something. And the other one we use a lot for the future tense is will. I will do that tomorrow. But because have is an auxiliary verb, it doesn't make any sense to use of instead of it and to say I could have done it or I should have done it, because of isn't a verb. You wouldn't say I have done it, so you don't say I should have done it. It's always should have, and that's where the apostrophe comes in to turn it into should have. The next question, why bother? Why not just leave it like it was? Why do we bother changing the spelling? And I think the answer to that one is that it's about representing how we speak. And that's really useful for writers when you come to things like characterisation. Representing how they shorten words and how they speak and what letters they don't put on the ends of words and things is really important for making people seem believable. And this example here, if you think about somebody perhaps with a Cockney accent, something funny's happening, me old China. We don't say the G on the end of something. We don't put something funny is happening. So you're missing out lots and lots of letters. And then the old China, if you're not familiar with it, it's Cockney rhyming slang for me old China plate, which rhymes with mate. So it's when you're talking to a friend. But again, it's the old, the D on old, that got taken out there. So you need an apostrophe. And the next question I get asked, so if I'm writing something formal, I shouldn't really use contractions at all, should I? Contractions are informal. They're one of those things that if you're analysing a piece of somebody else's writing, you would use contractions as one of the techniques to help you identify an informal, chatty tone. So no, if you're writing a science report, or an essay, or a business presentation, the chances are you probably shouldn't be using contractions because they want formal, academic-sounding language. But there's an exception. There's one piece of formal writing where you will find them, and it's poetry. Poets use them a lot. Shakespeare used them all the time. They're really useful for cutting down the number of syllables. So if you take the V out of ever, it becomes air, which you can get away with it being one syllable. Same with even becomes een, over becomes o'er, it is becomes tis, heavens becomes heavens. I think that one's a bit clumsy, but I have seen Shakespeare do it and I've seen other poets do it as well. So you can cut down your number of syllables to get the right number of syllables on a line and keep a piece of writing going at the right rhythm or metre. So poets do it. If you're writing about poetry and you're quoting, obviously you don't go through and correct the poet's work and take the apostrophes out and put the vowels back in. Just quote it as it is. And then we come to the other rule, which is possession. When somebody owns something, you add apostrophe S. So the examples I've got here: Sarah's shades, Max's house, the boy's dog. And then my sister's friend's dad's stepmother's dog. Even if there's a long chain of possessives explaining relationships, they all get an apostrophe S. It looks like an exaggerated example, but we tend to do this when we're telling anecdotes. It's almost about proving it's true, that you want to identify your relationship to the person who the story happened to. So even though that does look exaggerated, it is the kind of thing we do. So it's important to know that you keep on adding the apostrophe S's. And we've got the example here of Sarah's exceedingly cool shades. Even if you've got adjectives between the person who owns it and the thing that they own, it doesn't change anything. You still just add the apostrophe S to the person who is owning it. Now, if the word already ends in S, because it's a name like James, or because it's a plural, just use the apostrophe. Don't add another S. So the girls' shades. The word girls is plural. It has an S as part of the plural word. You just put an apostrophe after it. The same with the boys' houses, the boss's dog. It's still true even when we get to the bosses and we've added ES to make boss plural. You still just put the apostrophe after the S. So the boss's dogs, you've got plural bosses, but you still only have one apostrophe. Some plurals don't even have an S. So words like children, sheep, mice, with those ones you just put apostrophe S like a normal singular word. So the children's bags, the sheep's food, the mice's teeth. I was struggling a bit there for an example of things that lots of mice might own. So you might find that you've heard a confusing explanation of this rule, that there's something about adding apostrophe S if it's singular or S apostrophe if it's plural. And I don't think that's helpful. If the word has an S because it's plural, don't add another one. Keep it simple. If the word already ends in S, just give it an apostrophe. If it hasn't already got an S in its possession, give it an apostrophe and an S. Don't give it something it's already got. And there's an example for you. It's like shades. If you're wearing a pair, it doesn't matter why you're wearing them, you don't need another pair. If the word's already got an S, it doesn't need another one. Okay, here's an example. This is the one that confuses everybody. The word everybody hates. Is it its or is it its? With an apostrophe, without an apostrophe? Well, the answer to this one's simple. Its, with an apostrophe, is short for it is. It is always an apostrophe of omission, and there are no exceptions ever. If you want to remember the little rhyme, it's omits, that might help. It's always an apostrophe of omission, so it's always short for it is. It's without an apostrophe means belonging to it. So the dog dropped its bone has no apostrophe, even though the dog owns the bone. Even if the dog owned the whole T-Rex skeleton, there's still no apostrophe. Okay, and a couple of popular apostrophe catastrophes. Never use an apostrophe with a verb. Verbs do not have apostrophes. So she runs does not have an apostrophe ever. And the second one, and this is the one that really gets the grammar pedants going, never use an apostrophe with a plural, and it's the example that you always see in greengrocers. Tomato apostrophe S for sale. They're not selling anything that a tomato owns. They're selling tomatoes plural. It doesn't need an apostrophe. So there you are, that's how to use apostrophes. Don't have catastrophes.